Greetings, brothers and sisters. A lot of smaller things to get to, and I have a larger point about the truth and the reality of our situation individually and collectively. You know, like a 2022 reality check, sort of a continuation of what I was talking about in my video yesterday that featured Hilaria and Alec Baldwin. One of my friends on Instagram sent me this. Celebrity obsessed people are less intelligent, new study boldly claims. Well, I don't need a study for that, right? Because when you turn on Entertainment Tonight or read People magazine or whatever, you know, Access Hollywood, all these things, these shows, and you tune into the people who talk about celebrities and celebrity culture like they worship them, right? Or you go to any sort of social media site or any conversation you might have with a person who worships celebrity and celebrity culture, you know that they're not very smart, right? I mean, those shows are tailored to people who have a sixth grade level of education, eighth grade level of understanding of world events and things. I mean, and it's just so mind-numbingly dumb, and that's what I make fun of here on a regular basis, right? You have to be really unconscious to buy into it. You just have to go into some zombie-like, ghoul-like state to be obsessed with celebrities. And until about 2015, I've told this story before, that, my family and I were in sort of a desperate situation, and we were trapped in India. We were, I was going through the beginning stages of a divorce, and there was all this chaos and just a real stressful time. I was going through a spiritual cleaning, and my YouTube channel took off. And I knew that this was something that I was supposed to do. I was being instructed by God to continue, making this YouTube channel more accessible to people. And I knew I had to make it financially viable. I had to be able to make a living because I was going to spend so much time. I was committing to making daily videos and, all the things that I do regularly now. And I went to look at the videos that were doing, best in terms of viewership and in terms of financial gain, financial profit. And I had made maybe 8 or 9 celebrity videos and then a couple of other sort of political videos that were more, this type of video. And those out of 1,500 videos that I made, those videos were my top 10 videos by far, right? And I sat there just bummed because I've always had a distaste for the celebrity culture. It repels me. And I knew that I had to make celebrity videos in order to do what I needed to do here, financially, to get the spiritual message out, to connect to more people, because there's such interest in celebrity culture in one way or another. People who hate it, people who love it, whatever it might be. People who, want to find this hidden secret Illuminati stuff in there, all those things. And I just sat there bummed at God. I was being ordered to dive into this cesspit of the celebrity culture. And back then, I was able to make one celebrity video a month. It was okay, not even that, right? And now I was going to have to do one a week. I'm all right, I'll do one a week, right? And, I just was bummed by it. God was ordering me to do something that I thought was beneath me. But, I end up enjoying it now, joking about it, mocking them and mocking the whole thing. But, when I first had to do it, it was it really sucks for me. It just sucked. And, I now see that this is where people are. This is what people are interested in. This is how the internet goes. And to get this message about God being inside of you is a very simple message. That was my main focus when I started making these videos. Most people don't think about God being inside of them. That's not what religion teaches them. They don't have some sort of internal relationship with God. I mean, that's the majority of people. Just putting this idea out there is kind of revolutionary, talking about the heartfulness system and some of the other spiritual ideas that I weave into these narratives. So I've accepted it, right? And I've seen that it's, benefited people and it's benefited me. But in the beginning, I was like, it was a complete bummer, Like I was like, you really want me to do this? But you have to dive into the cesspit because you got to meet people where they are. And, I want to say like I'm proud of it, but, one of the things that like I think is an accomplishment for me is that I was willing to do this and I found a way to almost like master it, right? Like I'm really good at weaving spiritual narratives into this stuff about celebrity culture or politics or, any number of things that people are more interested in. But like I said in the beginning, I was like, man, you really want me to do this? I felt, put upon. I was, frustrated and angry or whatever. And it took me a while to accept the idea and even longer to ultimately become grateful for it. At the time, like I said, my family was in crisis. My kids were, they were going through stuff, acting up, going through divorce. We were having a visa crisis, first in India, then another one in Sri Lanka. Just like there was all these things that were happening, health issues. It was just a rotten time, really difficult time, spiritual cleaning. And then to dive into this celebrity world that had a much more negative effect on me when I first started making these videos. Like it would just wear on me. I would feel it. In terms of my spiritual condition, in terms of, everything. Like it just, don't send me back in there. Yeah, I was making those Full House videos and things like this. It was a very difficult time. And I could barely make one video a week. Like it was just, that's all I could do. That's all I could tolerate. Like, it was like being in some toxic environment. And one a week was all I could take. And now I go to these sites on a regular basis. Whatever Huffington Post puts up there, Yahoo News, and Page 6, New York Post. I see these things on a daily basis, and people are always sending me stuff about celebrity culture, and I've just adapted to it, right? But yeah, like it's the land of the dummies. It's unfortunate that people are so focused on it, both the negative and the positive, because it's so remedial. So keeping that in mind, I see things all the time that I just don't want to get involved in, don't want to cover. Doesn't really apply anything to the channel. And, some of these things is about what celebrities are dating or marrying and their fake celebrity relationships like this. And for the past couple of days, I've been seeing a lot about Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson went on some vacation to some, I guess, the Bahamas, some tropical paradise. And at the same time, Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, and I've said in the past, Kanye West is one of my favorite celebrities to cover. He's hilarious. Was in New York with this actress Julia Fox. She was in that Gems movie with Adam Sandler. Don't really know who she is, but they talk about her a lot on New York Post and Page 6. Very, a New York friendly celebrity. And so I saw this and I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't really read the articles. And then yesterday it occurred to me, where are their kids? Kanye West and Kim Kardashian have 4 or 5 kids. And, I hear them, you see headlines all the time about their kids and you're Kanye talking about their kids. And I'm like, where are their kids? She's in the Bahamas with Pete Davidson, some guy that is like half her age. And Kanye West is in New York with this woman. Apparently he bought her a whole hotel suite full of clothes. She, posted this all on social media or whatever it was. These are all clothes that Kanye West filled with his hotel room for this woman. That was their date or whatever. But where are his kids? Like, who's taking care of their kids, right? You see this all the time. I was talking about this with Alec and Hilaria when she handed off that kid to the interviewer. I have a meme of that I can show you here. It's a meme it's a collection of it's a 3-part meme. I'll put that in here.
Well, we're having a baby. How about that for a project?
Ay, ay, ay.
Breathing's here, okay. Breathing's here, okay.
Breathing's here, okay.
Sí. Ay, ay, ay. Sí. Ay, ay, ay. Sí.
But she just handed her kid off, and she makes a big deal about using her kids as props in her Instagram page. But these celebrities just ditch their kids all the time, right? Like they're in the middle of divorce, and Kanye goes out, to bang this actress, and Kim Kardashian's with the ghoulish Pete Davidson, and their kids are just with some nannies or whatever it is. Do they even have kids? Is that I mean, is that just some ruse? Like the whole thing, seems disingenuous. And then it came up that this woman, Julia Fox, was the model that posed with Pete Davidson in this really creepy Illuminati photos. This is them together. And so they have some kind of weird Illuminati, mannequin previous relationship. And so this is why celebrity culture, the people who worship celebrities, are the stupidest people on the planet, because there's, so much twisted, weird stuff and unexplainable stuff and unnatural things, right? Where they just, when you have little kids, you just don't go off and ditch them, right? I mean, the majority of parents don't just like say, all right, let's go on a vacation, dump the kids off on some, paid employees and leave for like a week, right? These are toddlers, right? These are kids that are high need, but these celebrity parents, like their kids aren't even, they're there for them to talk about and, pretend that they're normal people, but they're not, right? So then I saw this, I didn't want to cover Alec and Hilaria today, but Alec's older daughter, the one that he called Pig that time, Ireland Baldwin, I live in constant fear I'm dying from a heart attack. She posted this on Instagram, and she has a blood pressure machine that she keeps with her, and she has so many anxieties. This is what she said. This is not an ad for blood pressure machine. This is not an ad at all. I'm posting this for whoever suffers with anxiety and anxiety disorders like I do. I ordered a blood pressure monitor to accurately read my heart rate and blood pressure because I live in constant fear that I'm dying from a heart attack, also known as cardiophobia. Well, you did a great job with this one, Alec, right? Have 6 more kids. You have one who has such severe anxiety that she carries around a blood pressure machine, And you got to think that it has something to do with him. Biden gives Democrats the anti-Trump speech they've been waiting for. I saw a little bit of this. I'm not going to cover it. I'm not going to cover, the event, the anniversary event, any of these things. Just to say that this thing is here to stay. And I talked about this a little bit with Trump yesterday. It's here to stay. And, there's a larger point I want to make about this after I get through all these headlines. So there's 2 stories that I found very interesting about how they so want to, I'm talking about, this is the idea of cancel culture. And a lot of this actually came from the truth community in the beginning. When truthers started to go into celebrities and politicians' past and discover old tweets that were no longer acceptable. I mean, this is also the woke culture. The truth community didn't have the power to cancel people, but the woke culture did. But it's something that everybody's so hyper offended, so ready to hit the I'm offended button, right? And so there's 2 stories, one about this basketball player, Kevin Porter Jr., and one about Jon Stewart, where something is misunderstood and everyone fires we got to cancel this person and destroy them, because there's been a misunderstanding. And so the first thing is Wizard broadcaster apologizes for Kevin Porter's comment after LeBron James complains. So this guy, Kevin Porter Jr., is a basketball player who played for the Cleveland Cavaliers and had a lot of off-the-court issues, a lot of drama, maybe some legal stuff. And so they basically gave him away, even though he's a good, up-and-coming player, to the Houston Rockets. And he's had a number of issues there as well. Like recently he stormed off the court and didn't want to play in the game. He had an argument with the coach and just walked out of the arena. He was suspended for a game and then came back to play, I believe, in this game. And the announcer for the Washington Wizards, which is an interesting name, right? They used to be the Washington Bullets, and that was not politically correct. So they went full, they could be the Washington Warlocks, right? In terms of Freemasonry and things like this. But the Washington Wizards announcer said this.
What a well-designed play, and you got to give credit. Kevin Porter Jr., like his dad, pulled that trigger right at the right time.
And so he said, like his dad, he pulled the trigger right at the right time. And so this is the announcer, Glenn Consor, and this is what happened. In 1993, Porter's father pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter after a girl was shot in his car. The elder Porter, who was killed in 2004, claimed the gun accidentally discharged while he handed it to her. A witness, a friend of the girl, called the shooting intentional, and then recanted. And so that seemed like kind of a low blow, right? At first glance, you would say, wow, that's effed up, right? That he would say, that he knew how to pull the trigger just like his dad.
Kevin Porter Jr., like his dad, pulled that trigger right at the right time.
So on face value, that's a really effed up thing to say, like a sociopathic, monstrous thing to say, insulting. I mean, it's the kind of thing that gets you fired. It's really effed up to say he pulled the trigger just like his dad when he shot that girl. Like, that's really hostile. But then you have to ask yourself, well, did he know? Is there some other explanation? Did he know that Kevin Porter Jr.'s dad did that? Like, was he aware of that? Because if he wasn't, then what's his other explanation? Is there a possible other explanation? That's the way it used to be, where people would say, all right, maybe we need to get this guy's explanation. It doesn't make much sense that he would say this. Like, why would he say this? So hostile. And I didn't know that Kevin Porter Jr.'s dad was involved with the shooting. Like, I didn't know until this article came out. So before rushing to judgment, why not ask the guy? Why not get this guy's statement? But that's not how it works anymore, right? People just assume the worst like it's fact. We're going to get into this with Jon Stewart as well. And one of those people calling for this guy's head was LeBron James. The chosen one, who is now some sort of, fake-tivist, right, said this. Oh, he thought this was cool, huh? Nah, we ain't going for this. Sorry, but this isn't going to fly. How insensitive can you be to say something like this? Beat it, man. I pray for you, but there's no place in our beautiful game for you. Now, LeBron James is big in canceling people. He has, sounded off about other people. Now, he's a guy who signed a $1 billion contract with Nike. Yeah, Nike, which made their money through slave shops, through sweatshops, right? Exploiting often young kids in these sneaker-making sweatshops, which we all know about. Nike has a horrible history of human abuse, and LeBron James has got $1 billion of this sweatshop money, right? So he doesn't get to say anything about anybody. He's connected to all these corporations that have done bad things, and, he's made money off of the exploitation of other people. So he doesn't get to cancel anybody. Like, he's a part of the abusive culture. He's a billionaire and has made his money from, these dubious corporations, including Nike. And then the guy said, this guy Glenn Consor, who doesn't have a history of any of this, like all these cities that have basketball teams have a local broadcast, right? So you go to any of these cities and they have their local broadcast, and there's nationally broadcast games. But these local broadcasts, this guy would be broadcasting through a local TV station for all the Washington Wizards games. And so this is just some local commentator. And he said this: I want to sincerely apologize to Kevin Porter Jr. and clarify last night's call. Please allow me to take the opportunity to sincerely apologize to Kevin Porter Jr., his family, and the Rockets organization for my comments I made during last night's game. I mistakenly thought that Kevin was the son of former Washington player Kevin Porter, who I, am familiar with his name, and was unaware that the words I chose to describe his game-winning shot would be in any way hurtful or insensitive. I've reached out to Kevin to personally apologize. I hope to be able to talk with him soon. So if you understand this, it makes logical sense that that's what he said. That's what he thought, right? See, it's only a messed up thing if he knew his dad had shot somebody and went to jail for it. And I guess his dad was later shot by somebody else. And so if he knew that, it's a really effed up thing to say. But if he thought his father was somebody else and a former basketball player, then that makes a lot more sense. It's more logical. And if this guy had a history of saying things like this, which I've never heard the guy before, so I don't believe he did, this makes more sense. And there was another guy named Kevin Porter who is a professional basketball player. And there's multiple players in the NBA. And so right now, currently, there are 25 out of something like 520 NBA players, 25 of them, their dads play in the NBA. And there's been 80 players whose dads play in the NBA. You know, Kobe Bryant's dad, Joe Bryant, play in the NBA. Steph Curry and his brother Seth Curry, his dad Del Curry, play in the NBA. And there's all these other players, some of them, you know, are stars, some of them aren't, that their dads play in the NBA. It's a very common thing. So it's an easy mistake for this guy to make, to think that a guy named Kevin Porter Jr., and there was another Kevin Porter that played for the team that he announces for, and so he thought, oh, this must be the kid's son, the guy's son. And I made the mistake that I thought Isaiah Thomas, the older Isaiah Thomas, was the dad of the younger Isaiah Thomas, and they were in some show together, and I saw it, and they were exchanging jerseys. Isaiah Thomas, the older, the one who's an announcer now, made a joke that the other Isaiah Thomas was his son, and I thought he was serious, right? So I made that mistake, and I said it in a video. It's something that, you know, is a logical mistake, because you see that there are a lot of players, this guy, Kevin Porter, who have children that end up playing in the NBA. You know, they have the genetics, they grow up with basketball. And so this guy, you know, was somebody who played with the Washington Bullets at the time. And this guy is the announcer for the Washington Wizards, and he thought it was his son. And so he was giving him a compliment and giving who he thought his dad was a compliment, and saying, the guy knows how to pull the trigger and shoot. And, you know, the whole idea behind being the Washington Bullets, right? Like, there's just a thing there. And like, he didn't know, he made a mistake about who his father was. And so he made this comment. Like, that's, you know, a very logical explanation. And so this guy's a reporter in Los Angeles. Now, LeBron James has his own son who's named LeBron, right? They call him Bronny James. And LeBron wants to play, you know, with his son. His son is, you know, a good basketball player. It's probably going to make it to the NBA, right? And so LeBron James is even in this situation. It's very easy for a mistake like this to be made. And it's just a mistake. No big deal. And people thought it meant something that it didn't, right? It says LeBron James says he's not calling for Glenn Closer to lose his job, but he isn't okay with letting that mistake go. I never met the guy. I don't know him. I pray for him, like I said in my tweet, but I can't let that comment ride about a guy, Kevin Porter Jr., who looks up to me. And so that's really effed up, right? What difference does it make whether he looks up to you or not, right? Either the guy knew or he didn't know about the guy's dad shooting somebody. Either he thought he was a former NBA player or he knew the truth. And unless this guy has a past history of making comments like this, or somebody can prove that he knew, the most logical story is that he didn't know, right? That he thought that it was his dad was a former player, so then the comment makes sense, and the intent behind the comment is no longer evil. It's just an honest mistake. And LeBron James admits this. LeBron says that concert comment, I believe that it was a slip-up, right? Now he knows. But he doesn't like that once an apology is delivered, many just want to move on and not talk about it. Well, there's nothing to talk about. The guy made a mistake where he had an idea that his dad was somebody else. So he made a comment, and then, you know, innocently, it was a mistake, but it was not a fireable mistake, right? You know, and LeBron James, with his $1 billion of sweatshop money, he wants to talk about it, right? Well, he made a mistake. It's time to move on. Like, this is how the cancel culture is, and everybody wants to blame and everyone wants to get offended. Like it's full-time people getting offended. And so to understand this there was another story, and this had to do with Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart calls out anti-Semitic caricatures in Harry Potter. So there are these goblins, right, in the Harry Potter movie that work at the Gringotts Bank, right, from the Harry Potter books and movie. And Jon Stewart said that these guys are a caricature of Jewish bankers. And so you can judge for yourself here.
Oral. And does Mr. Harry Potter have his key?
The internet was talking about this and how Jon Stewart was saying J.K. Rowling and the Harry Potter movies were anti-Semitic. And then Jon Stewart said this.
About Harry Potter and my experience watching it for the first time in a theater as a Jewish guy, and how some tropes are so embedded in society that they're basically invisible, even in a considered process like movie making, right?
Absolutely.
So we did that a month ago. This morning I wake up, it's trending on Twitter, and here's the headline from Newsweek. Jon Stewart accuses J.K. Rowling of anti-Semitism.
So I'm only showing you a portion of this, but it starts off where he's talking about, he does this podcast on Apple TV, and he has, I guess different hosts, different co-hosts. He had a couple of young guys. They were talking about bar mitzvahs. They started talking about Harry Potter, and it was done in a light manner. They were just joking. He goes into all that. And then he says it again here.
So let me just say this, like super clearly as I can. I do not think J.K. Rowling is anti-Semitic. I did not accuse her of being anti-Semitic. I do not think that the Harry Potter movies are anti-Semitic. I really love the Harry Potter movies, probably too much for a gentleman of my considerable age.
Speaking of which, whatever Jon Stewart had in terms of being a comedian, he seems to have lost it. Like, whatever's going on here, he just seems to be angry, and I don't know. Like, it's just, it's a struggle. It's a struggle watching this podcast.
So I would just like to say that none of that is true, and not a reasonable person could not have looked at that conversation and not found it lighthearted.
And I'll show you the clip. There's a clip from that as well, right? And you can see these guys are joking. There's nothing serious there. And they just wanted, the various publications, including Newsweek, which we'll talk about here. Let's watch the rest of this clip, and I'll come back with the original clip.
To Newsweek, your business model is fucking arson.
Because there's no story here, right? The mainstream media, in this case Newsweek, and all the people that ran with this, Huffington Post, so many different publications, most of them liberal, there's no story here. Here's the clip.
The Jews have arrived, and we are going to dazzle you with the access.
The Jews have arrived. What chapter of Harry Potter is that in? That's one of. That's when they get to Gringotts, right?
Can I tell you something about
that is
Harry
a
Potter?
wild thing.
Here's how you know, and this is the whole thing, and you don't have to use this, but this is true. Here's how you know, like Jews are still where they are. Talking to people, what I say is, have you ever seen a Harry Potter movie? And people are all like, I love the Harry Potter movies. Like, you ever see the scenes in Gringotts Bank? And they're like, I love the scenes in Gringotts Bank. He's like, do you know what those folks that run the bank are? And they're like, what? And they're like, Jews.
And then
I remember.
And then that person says, no, goblins. And then you go,
And you're like,
you hear yourself?
Let me show you this from, it's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I just want to show you a caricature. And they're like, oh, look at that. That's from Harry Potter. And you're like,
You can see that there's a comedy bit. They're laughing and joking. It's light, right? He's not saying anything. He's not calling J.K. Rowling a anti-Semite. He's not saying any of these things. And so the thing sat around on the internets for a month, and somebody decided to put intent. What was Jon Stewart's intent? And they could have contacted him. Newsweek, any of these publications. Hey, Jon Stewart, what were you saying here? Were you saying J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter were anti-Semitic? Do you want them canceled, right? Like, what's your intent behind what you were doing here? Because they don't know. And, he comes back and says, no, that wasn't my intent. And they took a huge journalistic leap, journalists in air quotes, because this is how it is now. It's about outrage. It's about people being offended. It's about canceling people. It's about blaming individuals for how miserable everybody is, right? It's about saying, oh, these people are bad people who are saying these things, and they have to be silenced and deplatformed, right? And just like with the Kevin Porter Jr. thing, it's whatever you perceive the other person said. It doesn't matter what their intent was or what they meant. It's what you perceive. Oh, that offends me. I'm offended, so it must be offensive. Oh, if I that bothers me, so it must be bad and wrong, right? It's my interpretation of your intention and what you were saying. And since it offends me, you should be obviously silenced in some way. And this is the victim consciousness, the outrage agenda, the outrage movement, the movement of hurt feelings and being offended. So going into the narrative portion of this video, this is, I had this realization last night. I guess I don't know if it's a realization because I've, said this in other ways, but it's a different way of talking about something that I think is essential to America and the world, and specifically in the truther movement. And when you do something for a while, if you are covering or researching something, and, it might be a problem, or it might be, a concept, or, an orientation to the world, or, whatever it is. Like when you do a job, when you work on something, your understanding of it grows, right? If you do something well, if you evolve and you change and you're doing something better and better, you do your job better and better, your understanding of the material, in this case, the problem, or the whole, instead of just, when you come in, like say as a truther or somebody, you see just a small part of the problem, right? But over time, as you do something, the more you look at it, the more that you see it, the more you see other things you didn't notice the first time. Like if you watch a movie over and over again, you're going to see details of things. And if you evolve and your consciousness changes, like this happens to me all the time. I watch an old movie and I see things I didn't see when I watched it 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 10 years ago or even last year, right? Because my knowledge of the system and Hollywood and the way that these, symbolism and the concepts and, events have unfolded, right? Now you have all these movies that had a pandemic in them. And if you go back and watch those movies, they, foretell, they predict, they foreshadow what's happening now, right? And so before 2020, you'd watch those movies and you didn't see things that were there, hidden predictive programming, wherever it might be, right? And so experience and knowledge and growth and just the passage of time reveals to you hidden layers of truth and things that you didn't see before. And anybody who's developing their consciousness and their consciousness is expanding and they are growing and developing, maturing, like when you look back at things that your parents did or things that you experienced as a kid, your understanding of it now is like, oh, that was effed up, right? Things that you accepted as a kid become stranger and, and inappropriate at times or whatever it might be, and often unacceptable as you become an adult. But also, like, you appreciate things. You're like, oh, man, I didn't appreciate all my parents did for me, even if your parents sucked, just getting the meals on the table and eating crap at work so they could, provide for their family, whatever it might be, right? You experience those things now when you're a parent, you re-experience your memories and you realize, wow, my parents were, they did things I wasn't aware of until I became a parent, right? So growth and maturity and wisdom and all these things and doing a job and experiencing something on different levels is, a part of what human life is supposed to be about, right? And one of the things that I've said over and over on this YouTube channel, and I can say it in a different way now, like my knowledge of it, my perception of it has even grown more but it was true when I understood it 20 years ago. It was true when I understood it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last week, and now, today. And I understand it better today in a different way today because I meditated last night and was just going through something, and I have another piece of the puzzle, right? So I knew 20 years ago that the system was never to be blamed. Like I knew this when I was studying psychology. And when you look through the DSM-5, there's nothing in the DSM-5 about how effed up our system is. I mean, our whole system, our economic system, our social system, what we consider, American life, all these things, right? And how it makes people crazy. It clearly makes people crazy. It makes people weaker. It's a bad system for people. The people that come out of the system, each generation gets worse. And that was before, like, the internet. I hadn't even been on the internet yet, right? Like this in the 1990s, early, 2000, 1997, 1996, when I was getting my master's in counseling. And I'd been in the counseling field, and I realized that none of the diagnoses in the DSM-5 talk about how the system is largely responsible for how everybody's screwed up psychologically and, is low functioning, because it produces unnatural people. It disconnects them from the family. It disconnects them from God, makes them materialistic and selfish and all these things, right? Across the board. There's huge systemic problems in how we turn out as people. We're worse people, weaker, more entitled, more selfish, more fearful, more hateful. The list goes on and on. But they never blame the system. And I knew nothing about the economic system. I knew nothing about like various levels of the stuff in terms of the truth community. But I just knew the system was never blamed, right? And so then as I became a truther, I understood more and more that our economic system is so fragile and debt-based. It's built and powered by perception, that we're playing a game of Monopoly. And if we realize the money is worthless and the system is not as great as we're told it is, then it would collapse. It's our perception and belief in the system that keeps it going. It's us believing in the illusion, the deception, the Maya that I talked about in my video yesterday. So then I understood it, why they can never blame the system. And so they always have to blame individuals. There always has to be people who are the scapegoat, the bad guy. Goat means something different now. When you were called the goat before, it was the scapegoat, the person who was blamed, right? Nobody wanted to be the goat, but now the goat means greatest of all time. But the social system still needs scapegoats. It needs people who have to be blamed for the dysfunction and evil. And there's lots of it, right? There's so much dysfunction and evil that they have to have villains, right? You have to blame a Trump. You have to blame a Biden, these political figures. You have to blame, disgraced celebrities, Louis C.K., Harvey Weinstein, Alec Baldwin, like all these people. There needs to be somebody that people go, look at that person's a bad person, right? They're responsible for some of the evil in the system, right? Bernie Madoff, like they'll serve up a sacrifice, some guy, some, person. There's a lot of people getting served up now that end up getting fired and canceled, and they're the face of an aberrant behavior. And then you have people like LeBron James that has $1 billion of sweatshop, Nike sweatshop money, right? But he's out there, hey, this guy, he said something, hey, look at him. Like all of us suck on one level or another. All of us are making mistakes. All of us have character flaws. All of us, have lied, have, participated in bad things. But it's, these one group of people that end up being oftentimes celebrated. They were once a hero. They were once somebody that got the positive narrative from the beast. And then they're devoured by the beast and thrown out as somebody to blame, somebody whose fault it is for these problems that exist in a dysfunctional system. And now it's more prevalent than ever. And everyone wants to be offended all the time. Everyone, has got this state of victim consciousness. It exists very strongly in the truth community, but all across our society. Everybody's saying, I'm a victim, my group is a victim, my demographic is a victim, and these are the people that are victimizing me, and they need to be held accountable. The system's rigged against me and me personally and my group, and everyone's out to get us and get me, and the system, it's, these people who are rigging the system, and we need to get rid of them, right? And then this idea of the deep state, or, the Republicans, the Democrats, the liberals, the conservatives, and all these people that are, these power groups that are to blame for ruining a great system, right? The system is always great, impeccable. We just got to get rid of these evil doers. It's the elite, right, in the truth community. The elite doing this, the elite, or one group or another, right? Everybody blaming some nefarious group that's making a good system bad, right? And then there's the people that say, oh, I'm going to get rid of the group, and we're going to get rid of them, and we're doing it, and, we're going to do it. Like Trump said, he ran on lock her up, like we're going to lock Hillary up. And Joe Biden ran on fixing what Trump had wrecked. And why isn't Trump in jail? Like, why isn't Trump being charged? Why isn't Trump, Joe Biden gave this long speech last night. Well, why haven't they arrested Trump? Well, if Trump goes to jail, then they can't use him anymore. Like, he's gotten his consequences. He's gotten what he deserves. So as long as he's out of jail, they can say, hey, this guy still needs to be punished, right? Hillary still needs to be punished. They can be used as a weapon. Once you put him in jail, you take him off the board and nobody cares anymore. Then you got to take responsibility for your governance, right, for your political policies. And we have a system that's collapsing, so, they need people to blame, right? They never, deliver on their promises because they don't work for you, right? They make promises and they villainize people when they're campaigning, and then they continue to do it. Why are they still talking about Trump? Lock the guy up, put him in jail. They could do it, right? The system's rigged. The courts are rigged. Trump's done things that are, criminal behaviors. And so they could easily get the guy, but they're not going to do it. Why? Because they don't want to lose him as a person that they can blame for, or just, feature as the problem, right? And this is the truth. This is the truth nobody wants to hear. This is the truth that no Democrat wants to hear, no liberal wants to hear, specifically people in the truth community. Most of you, right? Some of you get it, right? But most don't. That you are trying to separate things that are a part of the same whole entity, right? When you look at the system, it's a part of the entity. It's a part of the system. It isn't an individual group. It isn't some wayward group, some deep state-like group. It's the whole system. Because for most people in the truth community, and this is like QBs and the woke group, and, most people for years, for most of their life, believe the official story of what America is. And we're happy. We're happy that, things were, you had the lifestyle that you have, or maybe not happy, but at least somewhat content. And then the internet took off, right? The internet exploded, and there was all this new information. And all of a sudden, you were aware of things that you didn't see before. And you looked at these things as being separate from the good stuff you enjoy in this country, the things that you like, the things that you need, groceries at the grocery store, a car that you can drive, all these wonderful, heat in your house, right? It's really cold right now in many places around America. And imagine without heat and without water being pumped into your house, things that we take for granted. And so this system, everybody is 100% dependent on, which I talk about, but most people don't even think about it that way. They don't think that the system could collapse and they could be, shit out of luck, right? You could be out there trying to figure out how to survive without any real skills, like very few skills, and no local support system, no village, no tribe, no family. See, now we relate on a national basis. Like we go to Costco, we go to, these big food chains, we go to Walmart, we go to, all these nationalized, farms, nationalized restaurants, nationalized clothes producers. Almost nothing that you need is produced locally. Most of the things that you get are being shipped from other countries. Your clothes, your vehicles, your technology, pretty much everything that you use and depend on isn't even made here in America. And it's not even made in one specific place. Like it's assembled in one place, but there are parts made all over the world, and you have a global dependence. And when that system shuts down and you just have your neighbors and your family and the people around you, and you got to come up with food, you got to come up with your necessities, and none of you guys are skilled, and it's unthinkable that could happen, but it's happening right now, right? there's a future where the global system isn't going to be there for you. And, what are you going to do then? And so most people don't think about it that way. I've talked about this in other videos. And so what you have in the truth community, you have people who are upset at the Voldemort, right? The COVID stuff and the, whatever's right there, whatever's going on du jour, right? Like the problems that are there. But, the good things that you enjoy in this system and the bad things like the Voldemort that you don't want and don't like, things that they're trying to force on you, are part of the system. Like they're a necessary part of the system. You're just now starting to see the evil side. And this goes across the board. The people in the woke culture, there's real problems people are seeing. The QBs saw real problems. The people in the woke culture see real problems. Like everybody sees real problems with America. Systemic abuse. People are like, all right, there's the slavery and there was systemic abuse. Yeah, but there's systemic abuse now. It's just being farmed out to other countries. Like we're exploiting other people. Our corporations are exploiting poor people in other places in the world. And then we are using the products that they make and the food that they grow, right? They're living in horrible poverty and abuse, and we're benefiting from it, right? As a country, all of us are. Like it's there. But you don't want to look at that. You don't want to look at how your lifestyle and the things that you need are being, taken from people or extracted from people and countries in an abusive manner. Like you want to talk about Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden's the worst. Kamala Harris. But what about, you? What about the way that your lifestyle and needs that you're getting and the products you get, like these things that show up and are $5 at Walmart, right? How can you get a hammer for $5 or whatever it is, $10 at Walmart? Like there's things that you buy, like the materials that are going to whatever you're buying at Walmart are more expensive than the complete product that includes labor of making the product. And yet somehow they're that cheap, right? Well, it's because of the way that they've rigged the system against these poorer countries, right? And so, these things are being produced and you get them cheaply, like dollar store stuff or whatever it is. The things themselves, the materials are worth more than the amount of money you pay for it. It's because of the way the system is rigged, right? In your favor, in my favor, all of our favors here in America. But that's okay. Screw those guys. They got what they deserve, right? American, this is, right? It doesn't matter. They don't count, right? They're not, whatever. Like you're perfectly fine with it. You don't have a problem with it. Most people don't. Like we don't have a problem with it, right? That people are suffering so we can enjoy our lifestyle. Not even enjoy it because we complain and we're entitled about it, right? But these other guys are trying to make us wear masks, right? So there's this element where, things that are being forced upon you by an abusive system, you don't have a problem when they're abusing people in other places, in other countries, or other demographics in the system. But when they start trying to force their evil on you, their agenda on you, take things away from you, the lifestyle they promised you, right? The things that you thought you were entitled to. And then, oh my God, these are evil doers in the system, right? No, that's how the system works. It's an evil system that exploits other people and animal life and the natural environment and the world, and it's deceptive and it takes people away from God, and it's hurting all of us on one level or another. But we can't imagine life without it because we're weak and 100% dependent on it. So we prefer to blame individuals and one problem. That's the problem there. This is the problem here. Yeah, well, it's all the problem, right? There's the good part of the system, which we like, but the evil is there. And you're just seeing a little bit of the evil, and you're like, oh, there's the evil. We got to get rid of that one evil. Oh, no, there's a new thing. This is the new evil. We got to get rid of this. Look what they're trying to do to us. Right, look, it's evil. Look at these guys, Biden. We got Fauci. We got to get rid of them. Yeah. They just represent the whole system, right? The whole system is predicated on demonic, intention, ego, going away from the will of God and doing evil stuff, unnatural things. And we benefit from it. Like there's some good products like, okay, my pan doesn't stick. Look, my egg, you see it doesn't stick. I talked about that with that movie Dark Water. That great movie I just saw with my wife, right? And then, Teflon's bad, but when we first got it, wow, my God, look at this. So easy to clean my pan. My life just got so much better. I'm spending so much time washing my pans. Look at my no-stick pan, my Teflon pan. Yeah, but you know what the environment and, people who live around these factories and, all the evil, scientific chemical engineering that went into making this thing, how it warps, the natural processes and puts poisons into the water and the earth and people and animals and tree life and all these things. Yeah, but my egg don't stick no more. Come on, right? Didn't you hear me? It's easier for me now to clean my pan. Screw that. Let's spray some of this stuff on my kids' clothes. It'll be easy to get the stains out. Let's just spray it everywhere, right? Yeah, but it's hurting things, and eventually going to kill you. Yeah, I know, but right now it's like I don't have to clean. Like, my kids always getting stains on their clothes. Let's just spray them Teflon on it. We'll just see what happens. So what this is about is that for, numerous generations in America, we have been able to benefit from the spoils of this system, this criminal system. We have been able to enjoy the spoils of the system without really experiencing the evil. Like you have some people that go to war veterans, right? People in the military, they experience the evil, they're traumatized, they're forced to do things that are unethical, immoral, in terms of these wars or police actions and things like this. And then you have individual people that sort of fall out of grace of the system in one way or another. You lose your job, you lose your house is foreclosed on, some bad things happen. You get blamed for something that, you're the fall guy for something, whatever it is, right? So there's individual people, Americans, who experience the evil of the system. People sense it, but for the most part, we've been able to enjoy the good things, the spoils, the things that are enjoyable of the system without experiencing the dark side of the beast, right? And then people wake up, the woke, the QBs, the people in the truth community, the right-wingers, the left-wingers, all these people wake up to some of the, the evils of the system, and they only see a small part of it, and they try to separate it away from the things that they like about the system. That's what everybody does because we're 100% dependent on it. It's a psychological coping mechanism because we don't have a backup plan, right? But at some point, no matter what your demographic, what your place in the system is, whatever it is, right? You just have to accept it. You have to accept your inevitable fate, the inevitable fate of the system. You got to accept that you're a cog in the wheel and of a, demonic system that goes against the will of God, and you have to do your best to protect yourselves from the negative aspects of the system. Like you can't protect yourself from like 5G, right? I mean, there are things you can do. There are things you can do to minimize the effects, but it's just there hitting everybody, right? There's all these things, electromagnetic frequency poisoning that's talked so much about in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages is being destabilizing to people's physical bodies and their subtle bodies and psychologically and all the other aspects to it. And then there's the, processed foods. I mean, all the carcinogens. There's just things out there you can avoid as best as possible. Exercise, keep a positive attitude, work for God, connect to God, be of service to the divine system. And in that way, you can sort of, have a different orientation. Instead of working for the beast, you work for God. You're still functioning in the system. You have a role to play in the beastly system, but you accept everything that you get as being from God. Your money, your food, everything. You just say, God's providing me with these things. You take this different sort of attitude. It's called constant remembrance in the heartfulness system. And you switch the way that you perceive that your life is being directed or oriented, right? Because people in the truth community, the controllers are making me do this, the controllers have all this power, whatever group, whatever name you want to call them. These evil people running the system, as you look at the elite, they're dominating. But if you go beyond them and you say, my soul chose this, I'm here for a reason, I have a purpose here, God sent me down here for a reason, finding that purpose, connecting to God internally. And yes, the beastly system is dominating the world, and yes, it's, you're a part of it, but your orientation, your intentions, your point of view as a person is something else, something different, that it's all coming from God. Whatever you get there's a reason for it, and you just, you accept it, and you do what you're supposed to do here, you follow your soul's path, and you get out unscathed, right? You can't really affect the external system. You can't go out and change the world, change the orientation of the world, change the orientation of the system. but you can change what's going on inside of you, your perception, your experience, the way you narrate your experience, that it isn't the beast doing something to you, it's God. Like whatever bad things befall you aren't coming from some nefarious group of controlling elite that are, running the beastly system, but they're things coming from God for your spiritual evolution, right? And that way you can make something positive out of it, right? That your soul is chosen. It's part of a plan. It's not an accident that you're here at this time when this beastly system is dominating the material world, and that you can find a way to turn it into something that benefits you on a soul level, on a human level, and just have a positive attitude and be grateful. That's why I talk about it in that way. It's not an external change. You're changing internally. And you can see that the people who live the dream, I've said this over and over again, I show it every day practically. The people that are celebrities, politicians, whatever, people with money and power, the so-called elite and the shadow groups, they're not happy. They're stressed. They're disconnected from God. They're fearful. They're hateful. They're going in the wrong direction. And so, that doesn't work, right? Trying to attain that kind of life, that kind of, power and influence in the material world, and they die helpless and weak and, not able to affect their environment. Oftentimes their plans go awry. They suffer from a lack of creative energy, divine energy, prana, God's love that's at the center of everything and everybody, right? The energy that makes everything go, makes everything work. And so, we know that doesn't work out, right? Like you can see it. Like who of these people are truly successful? If you take away the wars and the gaudy, lifestyle and imagine having a house that's like 20,000 square feet with, 20 bedrooms to clean, all these things, right? These people, they can't even spend time with their toddlers. They have to go off to vacation, drop their toddlers on some paid employee, babies that need love, young kids that need love and attention from their parents and their family. And they're just an extension of these narcissists who can't love and can't serve, right? These kids are there to prop them up. You see this with all these celebrity children who, come out and say they were dumped here and they were this camp and this private school, and so their parents could jet set around the world and indulge and stroke their egos and try to stay relevant. And it's just despicable. It doesn't work, right? They're a failed person. They're as failed as you could be. They've gone so far away from their true purpose and what God wants from them, and they're just operating as a independent ego, a demonic essence that is working against the will of the divine creation. And then these ultra wealthy people, even more so, criminals, legal criminals that cancers. They're cancers on this planet, right? Making everything worse, making the people around them miserable, draining people, vast amount of people of their resources, and keeping people weak, stupid, and deluded, right? Under some sort of hypnotic spell, under some sort of magical spell that they see the world in a way that it isn't, withholding truthful information, the origin of our species, things that could help humans benefit and move forward and connect to God and stay on their soul's path. But instead they've created this illusionary materialistic world where people are lost, lonely, and confused, devoid of love, devoid of any connection to God, devoid of their family units and their support system and all the rest of it. So at some point you reach a stage where you see it's just a show. The whole thing's a show, like in a bigger illusion, like I talked about in my video yesterday, the idea of Maya, that everything on planet Earth is illusionary, and it is, sort of an abomination of your true essence, your soul, your spiritual essence that's eternal. And so when you look at it that way, things aren't so serious. You don't get angry. You don't get, all worked up by the evils that you now see all of a sudden. Like they weren't there and now they're everywhere, right? But you're only seeing a partial portion of them, and you're not seeing the things that relate to you and the things that you enjoy and the things that you benefit from in a system that goes against the will of God, right? At some point there needs to be a correction, and somebody's getting stuck with it. Some generation's getting stuck with a system collapsing that they're 100% dependent on. And just this idea that like you've been told over and over again, your lifestyle is just getting better and better, and it's not, right? I've said this, over and over again. At some point, your lifestyle is going to get dramatically worse. And that's the point we've reached. We've reached the point in the system where the promises that they've made to you, the entitlements that you think you are owed by a system that has been, deceptive since its very creation, right? It's been deceiving you, promising you things it can't sustain. It's not sustainable. It can't deliver its promise. And at some point, the things that, everyone depends on are going to disappear. Food, electricity, water, all these things that are so easily given to us. And then you're like, oh, I got to figure out another way. And that's overwhelming to most people. Like, how's my life going to be without the products? I can't go to Walmart anymore. I can't go to the grocery store anymore. Can't order things from Amazon. I can't, turn on the switch in my house and make my house warm or cold or whatever the need of the day is. You turn on the faucet, no running water comes, right? And now you got to figure out a new way. Like, how do I meet my needs? How do I get the things that I need to survive? Water and food and shelter and all the rest of it. And then it becomes a race against time for you to develop the life skills you need and, reprogram yourself to be a more natural human being and develop a village-based support system where people can, work together to meet each other's needs in a, generous, caring way where people are serving each other and working to help other people and thinking about other people before themselves and, all the things that have long since disappeared in the American system. Instead of this, everyone's a victim and we all got to blame somebody for, all the evils, right, that's going on and cancel people and all this stuff that you see, it's despicable, right? Like, everybody's got to realize you're a part of a demonic system, and what are you going to do to change, right? And my solution's been, connect to God on an internal level, the heartfulness system that provides this connection, and through the transmission and cleaning, you end up working for God, and you're still a part of the system, but you've transcended it, right? Where God is now the giver of all things and the doer of all things, and this is part of a plan, and you're just walking your spiritual path and doing what you're supposed to do. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.